thank heavens they've gone. Now we can have a walk about the place. Looks as though we might have a shower, but you won't mind that, will you?
No, but wait a minute, I'll go upstairs and get a coat.
There's a heap of Macintoshes in the flower room. Robert, run and get a coat from the flower room for Mrs. De Winter, will you? What do you think of Beatrice?
Oh, I liked her very much, but she kept saying that I was quite different from what she expected.
What the devil did she expect?
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Angelica Kohlmann, who is the chairman and co-founder of Bloom Diagnostics. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
So your background is in cancer research before you transitioned to pharmaceutical. I wonder if you could just briefly give us a little quick summary of your background.
I was young when I had to, of course, as everyone, to decide in which direction to go. And I was caught in between many different alternatives from mathematics over to medicine. And in the end, I decided to go for medicine because I really wanted to make a difference regarding diseases. And I studied medicine. I did my PhD. I started with researching in cancer, the field of cancer research. However, I found that I realized it would take too long to make a difference. And I decided to move to the pharma industry where decisions are made regarding in which field do you invest. And I thought this would be more dynamic, and it was exactly the right decision. In those days, I was in my mid-20s, and it was the right decision.
So I hope that certainly has paid off for you. And of course, your journey has brought you in many different directions, including now entrepreneurship. So getting right to it, tell us a little bit about Bloom Diagnostics.
That's right. So, in between my days in cancer research and the pharma industry, and today, of course, there were many steps which made my decision, or which helped me to make the decision to co-found Bloom Diagnostics. In between, I was able to invest in biotech companies, so I learned what it meant to be in venture capital. We invested into several companies over many years, and I could really understand how investing in companies can make a difference, can make companies develop, become successful, and really also change society, change the way actually the world functions. If today we think about internet and everything that's moving faster and faster every day. And exactly this brought me to co-found Bloom Diagnostics, because being on the one hand a medical doctor, and on the other hand someone who loves new technologies and loves new developments, I could never understand why in the healthcare sector we're so much behind. Why people anyone, a child, can do banking from home, can do book something, order food or whatever, everything from home. And when it comes to healthcare, people usually still pick up a phone, make a call, make an appointment, go and see a doctor. And this is Stone Age, and this is not how it should be. More and more people today are health conscious, and there are not enough doctors globally. The healthcare systems are breaking down. We saw it during COVID. Governments were telling people, if you feel bad, please stay at home. Don't go and see a doctor. You should stay at home until you really need to see a doctor. So this is not how it should work. So Bloom Diagnostics was founded to change this, to make healthcare more accessible and to make a real difference. And be it Bloom or be it someone else, the world of healthcare will change. And the vision and the future will be that if you don't feel well, you can ask the questions at home. You can even perform tests at home. And if a test shows that you need, for example, antibiotics, your app will be in touch with the closest pharmacy to your home, and the antibiotics will be on the way to you. As Amazon today delivers everything in the US, at least within 1 hour, you will receive your therapy within 1 hour. And that's how it should be, at least for more trivial diseases. Of course, this will be the beginning. Over time, it can evolve to much more. But this is what we don't have today, and the vision is to get there. So this is where Bloom is tapping into to change this.
Well, I love what you guys are working on, and I think especially in certain economies, for example, the U.S. I think for the last 10 years or more, we've been at 7% of GDP that's consumed by healthcare costs. It's really cost prohibitive, but part of the reason for that is that the interlocking set of systems reinforce one another for profit maximization. In other words, the intermediaries that you're trying to disintermediate really want to hold on to those profits. And of course, now we have labs that take blood samples and give results within a few days, and you're really disrupting the system. And a lot of the points that you bring up are just, to me, so obvious in the sense of, it's what we should expect as consumers and patients, but, the system isn't quite there in place. Now, as it pertains to your at-home testing devices, recently, I think your ferritin test was CE marked approved for the EU and Switzerland for home use. How does that allow for patients to take control of their health while relieving some of the pressure at the hospital as well as the labs?
Yeah, so exactly. I mean, the focus should be on the consumer, the patient, and the rest will have to learn. For the consumer, I mean, the ferritin test, which was approved, and a few others are in the pipeline, and we expect approval now very soon. One is an instant AMH test. One is a TSH test, which is checking for the thyroid gland. We have a kidney test in the pipeline, which will also be approved this year, and there are many more to come. And so the consumer is the focus, of course, of the company, and the consumer should have the best possible service. And it cannot be that blood is shipped to a lab and that you need to wait, even be it only a few hours. That's not good enough. So people today expect to have results, if possible, immediately. And that's what Bloom offers. You can have your result instantly, in real time, within 10 minutes. And that's not all. The software team and the medical team developed algorithms together which work like the brain of a doctor, which combine instantly the medical history of someone, the symptoms of someone, and the blood values, and gives an instant result. As a doctor would say, well, you have fever, that's a symptom. You have a sore throat, that's a symptom, and your blood values show that you have an infection, a bacterial infection, right? So exactly this is combined in our algorithms, and you receive an instant result, and it is performed in a way that any layperson, any 12-year-old can understand. So this is the service which is needed and which really serves society, serves every individual to understand exactly what's going on. And we are not really trying to, doctors will still be needed, but doctors can focus on really more, it's the next level. So for the first level, at least in the beginning, Bloom can do the job. And we would very quickly say, look, it doesn't look good, you should contact the doctor. And of course, the system allows for connecting to other services as telemedicine, as many other services, which can all be connected and put together. So it's about building this whole system for the consumer to be able to better understand their own health, to have their own values in their apps, and yes, to be connected with their doctor, to be connected with their pharmacy. So this is a holistic approach.
So in my mind, there's a lot of concurrent questions that's coming up, and I'll try to bifurcate some of those things a little bit. What you're referring to is called the Bloom system, correct? So it's this ability to take a bit of the blood sample and then insert it into the machine that's able to read that immediately for results back into the Bloom app for feedback specific to that personalized health report that you're referring to. As it relates to that, again, you mentioned it's a B2C, it's a consumer play. So that means that the consumers are paying for some of these aspects, right? So that's one thing. And then how are other distributions or channels are there currently? And then the second thing is, I think a little bit tangentially is some of the DNA companies have taken some flack around privatization of the data, as well as who owns those blood samples, and could they in fact, let's say 23andMe or somebody else, could they have the right to then be able to actually use that for future research or other product development purposes? So can you start to address some of the product, the monetization, as well as the privacy aspects? You may also like our quarterly Ask Your Perkins event that brings some of the most notable experts and category-leading startups in their area of sustainability and human survival on Earth and in space. To register, visit askyourperkins.com/events.
Sure. So excellent questions. First of all, the question about us being a B2C company. Yes, of course, the C is the focus because it's the people directly who we're talking about and who are interested in receiving their results. However, the business model is a B2C. In the healthcare sector, it's not possible in another way. And we would really like to partner with insurance companies, partner with pharmacies, partner with doctors, partner with whoever is necessary. And for example, there is chronic disease, and now we immediately come to the monetization system. There are chronically ill people who need to control and to monitor certain blood values regularly. This is so much cheaper if done at home, of course, in a very reliable way, right? So, for example, if someone needs to check for thyroid gland hormones regularly, and if this can be performed at home, and as long as everything is fine, the person can just check. The moment something is not right, in the beginning, of course, we would say, please go and see your doctor, but it could even be a connection to the doctor, and help would be there immediately, telling, okay, you need to take more or less of your drugs, for example. So the model is a B2B2C model. And regarding monetization, yes, in the beginning, the customer needs to pay for the service, but we are 100% convinced that insurance companies will take it on into their programs because it's so much cheaper to perform it this way. Regarding data, yes, you're right. Indeed, we collect fully anonymous data. We have an extremely well-developed system. We're fully GDPR compliant. Everything is fully encrypted. None of us at the company, or no one, can see what what data is related to what person. This is completely impossible. We have different servers for personal data and for medical data. However, yes, we need to learn from that data. So any user needs to approve that anonymous data is being analyzed, because with every single test performed, we improve the system. With every single test performed, we can learn and we can improve the results we give to someone. And if you think, for example, one of the globally first AMH test, which measures fertility, meaning the egg cell reserve of a woman, the first test globally where you receive instant results will be launched this year by Bloom. The largest studies performed have around 1,000 women. And we can perform this in a day or in half a day, and we can have thousands of women, and we can have insights. How does smoking influence fertility? How does other factors influence fertility? Of course, age and many others. So we will have studies which are so important in order to improve lives and improve results. We will not sell this data. This data is just to improve the results. It may be used for clinical studies for the pharmaceutical industry in order to develop new therapeutics, yes, but it is not, the idea is not to sell it for any purpose and we even wouldn't be able to do it in a way where we could monetize selling data of people, right? So it's only about learning, and this learning goes directly back into the information and to improve the results we offer to people using the system.
So far, you guys, you've specifically referenced a number of different types of tests, both that's currently approved and those that's coming in the pipeline from a roadmap. So currently, I think there's the COVID antibody kits, the ferritin kits, and you just mentioned the ovarian reserve test. And then I think in the roadmap, you mentioned thyroid, maybe kidney as well. But let's start with the ferritin test. I think that was one of your first ones. And that one, I believe, measures the blood protein called ferritin, which then stores the iron. Where I'm going with this is, without getting into the details of what that means in terms of looking for lack of oxygen in the blood and potential ties into, let's say, anemia or restless leg syndrome or Still's disease, is that at the hardware level, as more tests gets added, what type of additional sensors are needed at the hardware level in addition to the tuning and optimization on the software and the ML level?
Right. So first of all, Bloom is not primarily a hardware company. Bloom is a software company. We build the hardware we need in order to apply our software. The Bloom Lab was developed exactly with this purpose, and it's a highly sensitive, highly accurate lab. We know that with costs and a price, we sell it with a very low margin of only a few $100 or euros. It is much cheaper and much better than other readers, which are available for thousands of euros or dollars. It was developed in order to read the tests and in order to, yes, it has a lot of firmware in there, and it's connected via Bluetooth with the app. So it is there to serve the purpose. However, it was also developed in order to be able to read a range of tests which we are presently developing, and it will serve this purpose for a long time. So it's the same hardware which we will use for a long time. However, we are agnostic. Should new hardware be needed, we will develop new hardware, right? It is all about the software which is there to stay, to grow, and to evolve. So we have many more tests in the pipeline. Of course, the goal is to have more and more tests on one test strip so that people, presently we measure one marker with one drop of blood, 1 or 2 drops. We are developing now tests where you can measure 2 markers, and the goal is to measure 10 markers, for example, with 1 drop of blood. And this can all be performed with the lab we have. So the hardware is still good for measuring other markers in different ways with a very high accuracy.
Again, I'm trying not to go to the hardware side, but I just naturally have intrinsically quite curious questions around it. But I'll just try and stay away from the hardware for a little bit. Is that when you think about continuous blood glucose monitor, which is a huge market in terms of diabetes and the need for this continuous monitoring, how does your hardware, firmware, and of course the algorithm account for certain things? And are there some limitations in terms of the current physical lab capabilities that would preclude some of the tests from being able to happen in the future roadmap?
Well, presently, the hardware technology does not allow for every single test you would perform in a big lab to be performed. For example, presently, we are not able to count blood cells, so red blood cells or white blood cells, right? So this is something the present technology does not allow. However, we are in constant development. Development will never end. We see ourselves as perhaps Apple in early days when, people thought, why should I pay so much for such a phone? In fact, now today, it's a computer which offers much, much more. It's a software company, Apple, and that's how we see ourselves. So today's technology allows for big steps ahead. However, in parallel, of course, we look into what will be after the day after tomorrow. So what do we need further beyond that? But it is a hard journey. You need to build it step by step, and you cannot start with the day after tomorrow. You need to start with what you have. So we're constantly developing, we're learning every day. The technology allows for big steps, but for sure we will develop new technology, and we also look into other companies or universities, what they're doing in order to complement, to grow our capabilities.
So I think there's a couple of things that's fairly important. One is the ubiquity installment of these devices into the hands of these patients worldwide. Of course, you guys are more focused on Europe for the time being. And then, of course, the business model that could change over time where, at some point, to your point, the hardware is not meant to be the profit center, right? But once you have it in somebody's home, then all of a sudden you have a captive audience and can start to monetize on a recurring SaaS basis. Ultimately, you guys are really disintermediating the kinds of labs that exist today and turning it into really a service model. So for that to happen, what are some of the kind of next set of large milestones or development that has to happen? Don't forget to visit astroperkins.com to register for our next quarterly events. Past and current speakers include Damian Vaughn, former NFL player, Neil Gregory, Chief Thought Leadership Officer at the IFC World Bank, and many more. To register, visit astroperkins.com and click on Events.
So, first of all, much has to happen in the minds of people. People need, and they're understanding that prevention is the best way of taking care of your health. So when you only go to see a doctor, you go to a lab once you are not feeling well, except it's a cold, but otherwise it might be a bit late. So you should monitor certain parameters depending on your lifestyle, perhaps more often. If we take the ferritin, for example, this was a conscious choice. Today, we have an increasing number of vegetarians, of vegans, and it is impressive how many people have iron deficiency. It's many more than we think. So if someone does a lot of sports and is a vegetarian, it makes a lot of sense to track iron. So the goal, of course, is to have those, the labs, for example, in the homes of people, and that people and a whole family can use a lab. It's not just for one person, right? So that people have that at home as they have a laptop, as they have other devices, and that they track for depending on their lifestyle on different parameters. As certainly this will not be achieved right in the beginning, except for some very tech-affine people. We have the option of placing labs in pharmacies and drugstores, and people just purchase the test and they can have instant results on their own smartphone. So we will roll out, when we're starting to roll out with partners as pharmacies and drugstores who offer the service. And of course, people can also purchase labs and tests on the website. So it's a dual approach. Ideally, people have the control in their hands, right? So that's the goal.
And I think you're right. I think ultimately it comes down to behavioral change. I think for most of us, if we were essentially even given the hardware for free to adhere and to regularly take the test, for instance, is going to be problematic. And same thing goes for drug adherence and compliance. Even if we have it, we from a human behavior may not necessarily comply with it and do it on a regular basis. So to that end, I wonder, as the miniaturization of the hardware and the sensory gets better, are we going to see either Bloom or other competitors take more of a wearable approach, kind of like the continuous blood glucose model of on the body, so that they don't have to feel like they have to prick themselves every time they need to take a test?
Of course, this is the ideal goal, right? To have a constant monitoring where you just receive an alert when something is not as it should be. Definitely, this will happen. But we looked into all technologies, and there is still quite a bumpy road ahead to achieve that. But it's the goal, of course, and it's also our goal.
Agreed. Now, my last question for you is lessons learned. So, having been a researcher, doctor in the pharmaceutical industry as well, and now an entrepreneur and CEO or chairman, are there any product or project failures that you've experienced and any kind of insights that you can share with others?
Well, certainly we had infinite failures, but success only depends on, perhaps not only, but mostly on perseverance. And if you give up after your first failure, you will never get there. So a lesson I learned a long time ago is that if you really have a clear goal, you need to overcome any challenge you encounter on that way, and to continue your journey. Of course, learning. You need to be able to correct. You cannot just stick to an idea. If you see it's not good enough, you need to change. So be always open to change, but really follow your goal and don't give up. So this is very important. This can only be done with a team and people who are equally engaged and interested. So in the end, it all comes to people around you and to having the right team. So people and perseverance are the main factors for success.
Couldn't agree more. So with that, today I've been joined by Dr. Angelica Kohlmann, who is the chairman and co-founder of Bloom Diagnostics.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.